I want to welcome everyone to the Senate Budget Committee today. Today's hearing will focus on the outlook for the Eurozone and its potential impact on the U.S. and global economy. We have three really distinguished witnesses with us this morning. I want to thank them each for being here. First, we have Dr. Simon Johnson, Senior Fellow at the Peterson Institute and Professor of Entrepreneurship at MIT's Sloan School of Management. Dr. Johnson has testified before this committee on several occasions, and we welcome him back this morning. We also have Dr. Fred Bergston, Director of the Peterson Institute for International Economics. I'd note that Dr. Bergston recently announced that after 13 years of ably leading the Peterson Institute, he'll be stepping down as director and focusing more of his time on research and writing. I want to commend Dr. Bergston for his years of leadership at the Institute and wish him well in his future endeavors. And of course, Dr. Bergston has testified many times before the Budget Committee as well. We also have with us this morning Dr. Adam Larrick, a visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, someone who is deeply knowledgeable on European affairs, having spent the last 2 years there. We look forward very much to your testimony and welcome you to the Senate Budget Committee this morning as well. I'd like to begin by just very briefly reviewing the situation as I see it in Europe. To be clear, what is happening in Europe has ramifications across the globe, certainly including the United States. Here was the front page story in the Washington Post last week. IMF fears European crisis poses risk of major recession. The article highlights the International Monetary Fund concern that the turmoil in Europe could have serious consequences for the global economy. Yesterday, we saw reports that European leaders had agreed to new measures to address the debt concerns in their countries. Here was the New York Times headline on the agreement: European leaders agree to new measures to enforce budget discipline. I'd very much like to hear the views of our witnesses on this agreement and whether it's the right answer for Europe at this moment. Most economists believe the Eurozone is already in recession. We can see the blue chip forecast shows Eurozone economic growth falling from anemic 1.6% in 2011 to a negative 0.4% in 2012. At the same time, European nations are saddled with large and growing debts that impact their ability to respond to the downturn. We can see that Greece and Italy both face debts well above 100% of GDP. Of course, our own circumstance, we now face a gross debt of more than 100% of our GDP. The threat to the U.S. economy is clear. Here is how economist Alan Blinder, the former Vice Chairman of the Federal Reserve, described the situation in his testimony before the Budget Committee last week. My rough outlook for U.S. GDP growth in calendar year 2012 is about 2.5%. The biggest threat to the economy is financial contagion from Europe. If we get a worst-case scenario, a European financial blow-up that looks somewhat like Lehman Brothers, I think most, if not all, of that putative 2.5% growth could just evaporate in a worldwide recession. I hope people are listening. If Europe implodes, the risk to our economy is serious. We need to remember that almost 1/4 of U.S. exports go to our European trading partners, so what happens to the European economy could have a very real impact on U.S. manufacturers and U.S. workers.